Hey everyone, and you're very welcome back to the Justice for Aaron Brady campaign. In this evening's video, we're going to follow on directly from yesterday evening's video, where we looked at the podcast created by Nicola Tallant in association with the Sunday World editor Neil Donald. And Neil Donald in particular, in yesterday's video, we looked at how they tried to big up and give some credence to the circumstantial evidence that was used against their son Aaron during the course of the trial. And we obviously contradicted that what Mr. Donald said, what we said was false, was incorrect. We never said that circumstantial evidence could not be used in a criminal trial. We never said that. What we did say was that the circumstantial evidence used against Aaron during the course of the trial was absolutely and completely flawed, tampered with, and it was manipulated to create a manufactured story. So then we move on to, and this is vitally important, what these two people do in this little clip here in particular, where they try to downplay to the lowest grade the evidence given by a senior detective. So what we're going to do is play this. So again, very short little clip from the podcast entitled Crime World, and it was created by Nicola Tallant. But in this little clip again, we have Mr. Donald rubbing his belly off the gutter again, because that's where he is when he is giving this little note during the course of the podcast. So let's have a look at the clip now. Thank you.
Like, the state presented a certain type of case, a circumstantial case. There obviously was a witness who suggested the person who shot Garda Adrian Dunne was 6 foot. And that's, as you said, a key part of the campaign. Aaron Brady is 5'7". As you'll know, if you sit through cases, any case where witnesses are telling the truth, they recall what they recall. And anytime a witness gives evidence, there will be a degree of inconsistency. Like, that has been my experience of sitting through.
Mine too. There is no perfect witness.
No, and the ones that are no inconsistency, because that's human memory.
Yeah.
Like, you don't remember what happened last week with, completely accurate detail. You just don't. So if you sit in court and you'll hear witnesses being cross-examined, and they will, the barristers will find sort of.
So this is Mr. Donald's introduction into the most vital piece of evidence during the course of Aaron's case, how to dismiss it and how to erase it almost completely from the case. Now, you will have seen in yesterday evening's video where Mr. Donald was doing the opposite. Himself and his co-journalist were trying to big up circumstantial evidence. And indeed, at the very start of this little clip, he says, the state presented a certain type of case, a circumstantial case. So that's fine. We've taken the circumstantial evidence that was given against Aaron, and we have shown it is completely and totally corrupted, and we shredded that evidence. And yet none of these journalists pick up on that. So what we are going to do with this clip here, when I watched it first and when I've watched it when I'm making this video, makes me actually feel physically sick when I see what these people are capable of. And when we break down this little clip, I think we're going to break it into maybe 3 or 4 little bite sizes and see how pathetic Donald is here and his co-host trying to peddle the curated narrative prepared by the authorities. And we can assume from earlier in the podcast, what's her name? Nicola Tallant is doing this on the behest of Mark Phillips, the senior investigating officer in Aaron's investigation. So that's our feeling on it. We may very well be wrong, but she tries to make apologies for him at the very beginning of the podcast, and now we see this. And this cannot be a mistake. It cannot be an error. This is choreographed, and it is done to try and eliminate the main point of Aaron's campaign. Well, one of the main points of Aaron's campaign. So we'll break it down and then we'll see what Donald is actually trying to do here.
Like the state presented a certain type of case, a circumstantial case. There obviously was a witness who suggested the person who shot Garda Adrian Donoghue was 6 foot. And that's, as you said, a key part of the campaign. Aaron Brady is 5'7".
So that's Mr. Donald's take on it. A witness suggested that the man who shot him, other Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue, is 6 foot. This is stomach churning to listen to. That a senior editor in the Sunday World, well, we're told he's some sort of an editor in the Sunday World, would attempt to just simply brush off what Detective Joe Ryan seen. So the witness he's talking about here is not someone trotting by on a pony. It's not a farmer out in the field next to the credit union in a tractor. It's not someone hand gliding over Carlingford Lock at the time of the Northern robbery. This is a detective with over 23 years experience working with An Garda Síochána along the border. This is a detective who was sitting in the front seat of his vehicle and was looking directly at the two gunmen. This is the detective who took in this information, and this is very important, that while he was looking at the two gunmen and surveying and what was happening around him, he had the wherewithal to consider, and it was a serious consideration Joe Ryan had to take in at that moment in time. He told us on a number of occasions in the court that he was hoping he would get shot with the handgun rather than the shotgun. So Joe Ryan was absorbing what was in front of him. Very important to note here, Joe Ryan was not aware at the time he was looking at the raiders, because it happened to his right hand side, he was not aware that his colleague had been fatally injured. So the information he was taking in at that time was not in any way impaired by the death of his colleague, Garda Adrian Donoghue. And just to illustrate this point, just going to show you a little clip from this animation we created to highlight this point. So just going to very quickly show it to you now. Here we go.
Here we want to highlight the actual facts and look at recorded details that took place on the night of the 25th of January 2013 in the car park of Lordship Credit Union, where Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue lost his life during an armed raid. The most important and vital evidence we want to look at is the perspective of the main witness, Detective Joe Ryan, who was seated in the driver's seat of the Garda car, who, while looking directly at the two gunmen who attacked his vehicle, said clearly in a number of debriefs and statements that the raider with the shotgun was 6 foot to 6 foot 1 inches tall. He also said numerous times in these statements that the gunman with the handgun was 5'7" tall. Aaron Brady is 5'6" to 5'7" tall. So if Aaron Brady was the gunman who actually shot and murdered Detective Adrian Donoghue on that night, logic follows the raider with the handgun would have to be somewhere in the region of 4'11" to 5 foot tall. Surely a fact Detective Joe Ryan would not have missed. Aaron Brady cannot be the man who shot and murdered Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue. Our justice system and An Garda Síochána have created a narrative and a storyboard that has led to the conviction of Aaron Brady, a conviction which is completely and totally unsafe.
So I think that little animation highlights exactly what we're speaking about. And once again, the attempt by Donald just to simply brush this away, the detective with 23 years experience, and in fact, like we have always said that the raider, the man who shot Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue was 6 foot, 6'1". There are actually details that Joe Ryan believed that the raider was 6'2" or 6'3". So there's no ambiguity whatsoever. And as we've shown in the animation, Joe Ryan had perspective. It's not as if he was just looking at one person and he could have got it wrong. And we will say once again, as it's seen in the animation, if Aaron was the man with the shotgun, it would mean the person with the handgun would have been a dwarf. So it is as simple as that. So let's have another look at Mr. Donald's next protestation about what happened in the car park.
As you'll know if you sit through cases, any case where witnesses are telling the truth, they recall what they recall. And any time a witness gives evidence, there will be a degree of inconsistency. Like that has been my experience of sitting through.
Mine too. There is no perfect witness.
No.
So Niall and Nicola tell us here that it is their experience that there has been inconsistencies when they sit in court and listen to witnesses give evidence. Now, very few witnesses, I think they are speaking about here, are people who are members of An Garda Síochána with 23 years experience. And this absolute bullshit about inconsistency holds no water whatsoever. From day one, right up until Joe Ryan gave evidence in Aaron's case in, I'm not sure if it was January or February 2020. And we take that forward again to this year. In February this year, Detective Joe Ryan confirmed that the man who shot and murdered his colleague was over 6 feet tall. So there's no inconsistency, and this attempt by you, Donald, to try and water this down and airbrush it out of the actual case, to airbrush facts after you trying to highlight circumstantial evidence is nothing but disgusting. And it really is gut-wrenching to hear such a pathetic attempt to save the arses of An Garda Síochána and the DPP who even brought this case to court. And I hope this highlights to the Irish public just the amount of collusion there is between yourselves as journalists and the authorities, because there is no way under the world you could be that stupid and not know about Detective Joe Ryan, not know about the two raiders, and not know that his evidence from day one was exactly the same. You're telling lies. There is no inconsistencies. I think there's another little clip here now.
And the ones that are no inconsistency, because that's human memory.
Yeah.
Like you don't remember
what
happened last week with, completely accurate detail. You just don't.
So human memory, and we can't remember what happened last week in great detail. And definitely to a certain extent, I would agree with that completely, Mr. Donald. But the witness who you just brushed over here very quickly, you didn't spend as much time on this as you did trying to big up the circumstantial evidence. But the witness we're dealing with here is Detective Joe Ryan, who would have been debriefed, and he was debriefed. Pat Marry told us he was debriefed on the Friday night immediately after the Modern robbery. Joe Ryan went back to Fort Apache, Dundalk, the Garda barracks in Dundalk. He was debriefed Friday evening. He was debriefed I'm sure, on the Saturday, maybe on 2 or 3 occasions. And I'm sure over the next few days, he would have been debriefed in association with psychological counselling, which would be more than warranted. And everything would have been done correctly by the book. And I'm sure there's professional and even outside professional guidelines for taking information from people that's been through that trauma. And again, going back to the inconsistency or consistency, from that moment, Joe Ryan said the man who shot and murdered his colleague was over 6 feet tall. So this thing that it's human memory and things can be forgotten, that doesn't hold here whatsoever. But I'll tell you what, Mr. Donald, you can go and check what An Garda Síochána did try to do, particularly Pat Marry here, with a gentleman called Christopher in New York. An illegal immigrant and a young man that was wanted here for criminal activity in round the Newry town area and in Mike, his hometown. And so basically what happened, this man came forward, allegedly came forward, and said he knew who the murderer was. So his tale was that he was standing at a bar and he said hello to this young man beside him. This young man was supposed to be Aaron and said hello back. What's your name? Oh, my name's Brady. Oh, Brady, are you the man that shot the guard? Yeah, that's right. So that was his evidence. Now, this man had never ever seen Aaron Brady before. And 3 years after that event, at a wedding, the man was drinking for 2 days. All day Friday at the wedding, for a good deal of Saturday, and this interaction was supposed to have happened at 3, 4, 5, 6 a.m. in the morning. He didn't even know. If you go through his statements, there are tissue of lies anyway, we know that. But you're talking about memory and inconsistency, and what the Gardaí would have tried to do, only we knew the scumbag Christopher was. And the reason why he told the lies, and indeed Christopher may very well, or is, the person who orchestrated the other criminals to give false statements against Aaron. But we're working on that quietly in the background to put all that together. So you have someone, never met anyone before, had an interaction of about a minute in a very dark, dingy pub called the Tombstone in Catone. I think it's in Catone, was in Catone Avenue. And anyone out there will tell you it's a dingy, dark, it was a late house in the Bronx Woodlawn area. And Pat Murray, Bobby Ogle, and Homeland Security agent Matt Katsky. This man hadn't, this was 3 years after the event, put a sheet of paper in front of him with Aaron's picture and said, who's that? And Christopher Morton said, that's the man that was at the bar, that's Aaron Brady. Now that, Mr. Donald, is more in line with what you're talking about, possible inconsistencies. But we know that man's telling the tissue of lies, and we know for a fact Aaron wasn't. We can prove Aaron wasn't in that bar that night at all. Number of witnesses from the wedding party, and indeed Aaron's sister was in the bar. So it's trying to give some comparison as to the way this story is being narrated and curated by the authorities and people like Mr. Donald here. So once again, there is no issue with human memory. Detective Joe Ryan was debriefed within an hour, probably, of the murder robbery. He was debriefed on the Saturday on 2 occasions. So this isn't someone just sailing by and may or may not have seen or registered something in their memory. So just one last little bit here. We'll listen to that and then we'll finish up.
So if you sit in court and you'll hear witnesses being cross-examined, and the barristers will find sort of...
So Mr. Donald's telling us there that witnesses are cross-examined by barristers, and he's sort of hinting that the stories can be manipulated by this cross-examination. Detective Joe Ryan was never cross-examined. Well, definitely not vigorously, because of the trauma and the atrocity he went through. I think out of respect for anyone, there was no pressure whatsoever put on Detective Joe Ryan. So Joe Ryan, very calmly in the witness box, told both the prosecution counsel and the defence counsel that the person who shot his colleague was 6'1", 6'2". So there's no issue with that whatsoever, any cross-examination or trying to belittle Joe Ryan's testimony. And your attempt in this 1 minute clip to eradicate vital information, I'll say once again, is absolutely and totally disgusting. And when we look back at the video we done last night, where you're trying to big up circumstantial evidence, that should never ever even have been allowed into a court. Shouldn't have been allowed into a court. That's our opinion. That's the campaign's opinion. And that goes back to our first legal team of first set of solicitors, Aaron's first set of solicitors, where we give them all this information, or the vast majority of in relation to times, cars, very dubious witness statements and sightings of vehicles. So that's the base for that. So thank you to everyone for watching. Please ask the questions of the media. Why are they not scrutinising what we're saying? And if there's any issue with what we are saying, we have said from day one, if there's any problem with anything we are saying, these people have done a 35-minute podcast and not one line again have they criticised or contradicted. There's nothing, they haven't contradicted one part of the Justice for Aaron Brady campaign, not one line of it. We have a trial that went on February, March and April this year, and none of the evidence or the information that came forward in that contradicted one line of the Justice for Aaron Brady campaign. So please, the public, we're asking you to contact this mainstream media and ask them why. Just a very simple question, and as we say, we're not asking you to pin your colours on innocence or guilt. All we're asking you very simply is to say, there are questions to be asked here, can we get it cleared up for the benefit of everyone involved in this case. Once again, thank you to everyone for watching. Thank you so much for your comments, very, very much appreciated. Please continue to like, comment and share, and we'll see you again in the next video. Thank you.